a very warm welcome to our audience. I feel immense pleasure to bring and present the very first edition of the podcast series under the head How to Make Online Classes More Effective. Dear audience, the pandemic COVID-19 has compelled the education system to go with digital and online teaching learning process overnight. Education is a continuous and developing process which should not be seized at any cost. In this new normal, our teaching community has been forced to adapt online teaching and learning process. Therefore, our podcast series will be based on online teaching learning and what should we do more for its effectiveness. In our entire podcast series, we would also throw lights on online teaching advantages and its various aspects. For this specific purpose, I would invite various guests from the academics to know their experiences and seek their insightful. So, all the keen audience listening to this podcast wants to learn and enhance something specific with respect to English communication would be surely benefited from this podcast series. I would be hosting the entire series of podcast. So let me introduce myself. My name is Vishal Kumar and I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of English at Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Greater Noida. Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology is one of the premier engineering and management institutes at NCR, Delhi. This premier institute was established in the year 2001. Moreover, recently NIET has become the first private institute in the state of Uttar Pradesh to get the autonomous status. It is indeed a feather on the cap. Dear audience, in the first edition of this podcast series, today our guest will be Dr. Yusuf Mehdi. So we will be discussing with Dr. Mehdi and seek his insightful and profound practical views on making online classes more effective and more fruitful. So, before we begin our journey of discussion in the first edition of the podcast series, let me introduce our guest with my audience first. Dr. Yusuf Mehdi is currently working as an assistant professor of English at Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Greater Noida, and he is heading the Cambridge Assessment Center also. Earlier, he worked as the vice president in Maxwell Learning Private Limited, Lucknow. He also worked as assistant professor in Jaipuria School of Business, Indrapuram, Ghaziabad, about 6 years. There, he was the chair center for creativity and innovation and also the faculty in charge corporate relations and placements. Prior to this, Dr. Mehdi worked at King Saud University, Saudi Arabia as an assistant professor for a couple of years. In total, he has around 12 years of experience of teaching English language and communication skills courses to the students and even business programs. Dear audience, Dr. Mehdi has done his doctorate in English language teaching from Amity University, Noida. He is also Cambridge University certified in English language teacher as he did his Cambridge Celta from Hampstead School of English, London. Dr. Mehdi has 14 research papers published in international and national journals of repute, including Scopus listed journals. He has also authored several book chapters, reviews, working papers, etc., and has been on editorial boards and review panels of many scholarly journals. As a corporate trainer and executive coach, Dr. Mehdi has trained and coached large number of teachers and professionals from MDPs, EDPs and FDPs. Dr. Mehdi's areas of teaching and research interest include business communication, business English, English language communication and English literature, linguistics and phonetics, personality development, soft skills training, translation studies, linguistics and phonetics. I warmly welcome to our guest in the first edition of the podcast series, Dr. Yusuf Mehdi. Sir, I would like to ask a question to you, and related to that, we would like to have your insightful ideas, your views and perspectives. So, what according to you is the most important aspect in making online classes more effective?
Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar, for inviting me to this podcast. Well, there are, of course, various aspects which affect the efficacy of online classes directly or indirectly, including the delivery platform, network, internet strength, class exercises, in-class activities. But I believe that the most important aspect would be the voice. In a physical class, both voice and the body language can be put to use to make classes interactive and effective. In virtual classes, however, non-verbal aspects have to be ruled out completely. So, we are left with just one aspect, that is voice, to make classes interesting, interactive, and effective. When I talk about voice, there are 4 P's which come to my mind, which are integral to using voice to make classes effective and interesting. The first P is the power of your voice. The voice needs to be authoritative and appealing, not only in online classes, but also in any kind of presentation or class. Powerful voice has resonance, which attracts the audience and keeps them hooked to the speaker. No wonder why we love Amitabh Bachchan's baritone voice. This is a natural talent in a way, but it can still be developed and improved through conscious efforts. Well, during online teaching, the power of the voice of the teacher will keep the students' interest intact. And powerful voice would also let the teachers have the complete control of the class. Powerful voice doesn't mean shouting or screaming. It is the resonance that is created in the voice which makes it powerful and authoritative. It needn't be too loud, and it mustn't be weak either. There should be a balance, and the voice should be clearly audible to the audience. The volume must be regulated accordingly, otherwise the listeners will lose interest. The second P stands for pace. The pace of the voice. It is very important to maintain a proper pace of the oral delivery. Pace is the speed of uttering the words while talking. Speaking very fast would lead to failure of communication since the listeners would lose contact with the speaker. Speaking very slowly too would make the listeners disinterested. So, maintaining a proper pace is very important to be able to effectively deliver your message. According to the experts, a reasonable pace or the rate of speech is somewhere around 140 to 160 words per minute. This pace would give the audience sufficient time to grasp what has been just said and absorb the information. The third P stands for pitch. Pitch is the rise and fall of the voice while talking. The voice rises and falls in a natural reflex to our emotional intensity, curiosity, feelings, and moods. It's the intonation of our voice. A flat voice is very unimpressive and leads to the feeling of boredom among the audience. The monotony repels the listeners, and the message to be conveyed doesn't find its destination. The last but not the least, P represents a pause. Pause is a temporary stop, a break in a verse. A pause while speaking is a strategic punctuation that makes the delivery emphatic. It also serves as a breathing space for both the speaker and the listeners. A pause serves various important functions in a speech. First, it gives time to the speaker to breathe and the listeners to absorb the information shared. Secondly, a strategic pause also increases the curiosity of the audience about what's going to come next, making the presentation or the talk more engrossing. Thirdly, a pause is also used by skillful speakers to emphasize what they have just said. Pause can be used in a very strategic way to lend the presentation a lively touch. So, I believe that strategic and proper use of voice dynamics can actually go a long way in making online classes more interactive and effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehdi, for sharing such an informative and insightful. It will not only benefit to our students, to our teaching fraternity, to our viewers and audience also. It is really a very informative and crucial one. So finally, I would like to also inform to my audience that we would also discuss in our upcoming podcast series how to make online classes more effective, and would put our special effort with multifold strategies on how to enhance English communication skills. Thank you so much, Dr. Mehdi, and to my entire audience to be with us. Thank you once again.